Most people misunderstand female pleasure because they study the body but ignore the mind, and when the mind is ignored, the body never fully responds. This is why many women experience intimacy that feels fine, but rarely unforgettable. They are present yet not fully open, engaged yet still guarded. Because female pleasure does not come from stimulation alone, it comes from emotional safety mixed with desire, and when those two elements meet, the body reacts in ways logic cannot control. One of the most misunderstood gateways to this response is breast intimacy, not because it is sexual, but because it is deeply psychological. This area is connected to vulnerability, trust, self-image, and emotional exposure. When approached without awareness, it shuts the body down. When approached with presence, it amplifies sensation throughout the entire body. Today, we're not talking about tricks or techniques. We're talking about 5 psychological moves that change how a woman feels in intimacy, and when how she feels changes, how her body responds changes automatically. Movi 1, stillness. Before to huge. Most men rush intimacy because they are uncomfortable with stillness. Stillness feels like uncertainty. And uncertainty feels like loss of control, but here's the truth most men never learn. Stillness is control. When a man can pause without anxiety, he signals emotional regulation. And emotional regulation is deeply attractive to the female nervous system. Before touch ever deepens, her body is scanning for one thing. Is this man grounded in himself? When movement is rushed, her system senses pressure. Pressure creates resistance. But when there is stillness, calm, and forced stillness, her body begins to soften. Her breath slows, her shoulders drop slightly. Her awareness shifts inward. This is not conscious, it is neurological. A woman's body does not open because it is being stimulated. It opens because it feels safe enough to stop defending. Stillness communicates that safety, not silence that feels awkward, but silence that feels intentional, the kind that says, I am present. I am not in a hurry, you are not being pushed. When this stillness exists, anticipation begins to form. Anticipation is the quiet tension before desire expands. Most men destroy anticipation by moving too soon. They touch before her nervous system has arrived, and when that happens, her body responds mechanically, not deeply. But when a man waits, when he allows space to exist, her body leans forward on its own. This is the first move and the most important, because without stillness, nothing that follows will land. Movi to NT UNL press you. Once stillness has established safety, touch becomes meaningful, not because of location, but because of intention. Erratic touch confuses the nervous system. It keeps the body alert, monitoring for unpredictability. But intentional pressure does something different. It grounds. Grounding touch tells her body, you don't need to stay alert. You're supported here. This kind of pressure is neither aggressive nor hesitant. It is calm, deliberate, unrushed. When pressure is steady, the body relaxes into it. Relaxation increases sensitivity. This is why some touches feel overwhelming and others feel intoxicating, even if they happen in the same place. The difference is not force, it is emotional clarity. When a man touches without seeking reaction, her body feels free to respond honestly. An honest response is always stronger than forced reaction. This is where many women experience a shift. Not performative, but internal warmth spreads, awareness deepens, desire becomes quieter and heavier. That heaviness is depth. Movi 3 or HVHM over randomness. Randomness keeps the nervous system alert. Alertness prevents surrender. This is why rhythm matters. Consistent rhythm allows the body to predict safety. When the body no longer has to anticipate sudden change, it lets go. Letting go is not something a woman decides to do. It happens automatically when her system feels secure. This is why rushed or inconsistent touch often feels disconnected. It pulls her out of her body and back into her head, but rhythm keeps her inside sensation. Her breathing synchronizes. Her awareness narrows, her responsiveness deepens. This is where intensity builds quietly, not explosive, not loud, but deep and consuming. Mover for obisavio and enstida of performance. The most powerful men in intimacy are not the most active, they are the most attentive. Observation changes everything. Noticing her breath, feeling subtle changes in tension. Recognizing when silence deepens instead of breaking it. This tells her something crucial. I see you. I'm responding to you, not performing on you. Being observed without pressure makes a woman feel chosen. And when a woman feels chosen, her body offers more. Not because she has to, but because she wants to. This is where connection replaces technique. Mode 5, co-fidating ratio, entitlement. Nothing shuts a woman down faster than feeling responsible for a man's outcome. Expectation creates pressure. Pressure collapses desire. Confidence without entitlement feels different. It is calm, grounded, unattached to results. This kind of confidence gives her body freedom, and freedom allows intensity. When a man remains steady regardless of outcome, her nervous system relaxes fully. This is where pleasure becomes expansive, not localized. When these 5 moves are understood as a sequence, something important happens. Intimacy stops feeling like an activity and starts feeling like an experience. Most men don't fail because they lack desire. They fail because they fragment the moment. They jump ahead emotionally. They skip the internal transitions a woman's body needs. A woman's body does not respond to logic. It responds to pace, safety, and emotional clarity. And that clarity is communicated through presence. When stillness is established at first, her nervous system begins to settle. When intentional pressure follows, her body feels anchored. When rhythm replaces randomness, surrender becomes possible. When observation replaces performance, connection deepens. And when confidence exists without entitlement, freedom appears. Freedom is where intensity lives. Let's go deeper. Stillness is often misunderstood as doing nothing, but stillness is actually containment. It is the ability to hold energy without releasing it too quickly. A man who can stay still while desire exists is a man who has command over himself, and self-command is deeply attractive. Many women are used to men who rush because they are afraid of losing momentum, but a grounded man understands that momentum grows when it is restrained. When stillness is present, a woman's imagination becomes active. Her body starts responding not to touch, but to possibility. Possibility is arousing. This is why anticipation can feel more intense than action. Anticipation invites the body to participate willingly, and willingness changes everything. When intentional pressure is added after stillness, it feels earned. It does not feel sudden. It does not feel invasive, it feels deserved. This is an important psychological shift, because when touch feels deserved, her body meets it instead of resisting it, meeting instead of bracing. That difference alone changes how sensation is experienced. Her body stops protecting and starts responding. Pressure here is not about force, it's about clarity. Clear touch tells her nervous system, this is deliberate, this is controlled, this is safe. Safety does not kill desire. Safety allows desire to deepen without fear. This is why many women crave intensity but reject aggression. Aggression removes choice, intensity respects it. Rhythm is what sustains this intensity. Without rhythm, touch feels chaotic. With rhythm, it feels immersive. Immersion pulls her awareness inward. The outside world fades, time slows. This is where many women describe feeling lost in the moment, not dissociated but absorbed. Absorption is a sign of trust. And trust allows the body to experience sensation fully. When rhythm is steady, her breathing unconsciously sinks. When breathing sinks, emotional attunement increases. This is not romance language. It's nervous system alignment. The body responds to predictability with openness. This is why randomness often feels exciting at first but exhausting later. Consistency, when paired with confidence, creates the observation is what prevents this depth from becoming mechanical. A man who observes is not passive. He is responsive. Responsiveness tells her, you matter in this moment. Not as an object, but as a participant. When her micro responses are noticed, she feels seen. Being seen is one of the strongest triggers for emotional openness. This is where many women feel a subtle shift from pleasure to connection. Connection intensifies sensation, because sensation without connection is shallow. Connection gives sensation meaning. Confidence without entitlement is what allows this entire experience to remain relaxed. Entitlement creates tension. It creates the feeling that a certain response is expected. Expectation pulls her out of her body and into performance. No woman wants to perform intimacy. She wants to experience it. When a man remains grounded regardless of outcome, her body relaxes further. Because she no longer feels responsible for his satisfaction. Responsibility is not erotic. Freedom is. Freedom allows her body to respond honestly. An honest response is always more intense than forced reaction. This is why the most memorable experiences are rarely the most extreme. They are the most attuned. A woman remembers how she felt, not what happened. She remembers whether she felt safe to let go, whether she felt respected while desired, whether she felt held without being controlled. These feelings imprint deeply because they speak to something primal. The chest area, when approached with awareness, becomes a gateway, not a destination, a gateway. It opens pathways throughout the body. Sensitivity increases elsewhere. Desire becomes more whole body. Emotional openness deepens. This is why careless touch here can shut everything down, and mindful touch can unlock everything. This is not about obsession with one area of the body, it's about understanding what that area represents. It represents vulnerability, self-image, trust. When those are honored, pleasure follows naturally. This is also why women often respond differently with different men. Not because the men look different, but because the men feel different. Presence changes chemistry. Calm changes chemistry. Confidence changes chemistry. A woman's body is constantly reading these signals, and it responds accordingly. Men who understand this stop asking, what should I do next? They start asking, what is happening right now? That question keeps them present. Presence keeps her open. Openness allows desire to grow without force. This is how intimacy becomes something shared, not something taken. As this experience continues, her body becomes more expressive, not louder, more honest. Honesty is intimacy. Intimacy is safety plus desire. And when those coexist, the body responds fully. This is why slowing down often leads to stronger reactions, why patience creates intensity, why restraint amplifies desire. These are paradoxes most men never learn. But women feel them immediately. They don't analyze them, they experience them. And that experience becomes memory. Memory shapes attraction. Attraction shapes connection. Connection shapes intimacy. This is why the 5 moves are not techniques. They are orientations, ways of being, ways of showing up with emotional clarity. When a man embodies these qualities, intimacy stops being stressful. It becomes natural, effortless, deep, and deeply felt. As this orientation settles in, something subtle but powerful begins to happen inside her. Her body stops asking questions. Questions like, Alabama, is this going somewhere? Is he rushing me? Do I need to manage his expectations? When those questions disappear, presence takes over. Presence is not dramatic, it is quiet. And it is deeply sensual. A woman in presence feels more than she thinks. And when feeling leads, the body responds honestly. This is where intimacy becomes fluid, not scripted, not predictable, but alive. Many men believe intensity comes from escalation, from doing more, from pushing further. But intensity for a woman often comes from staying longer in the right moment. Staying without tension, staying without demand, staying without losing composure. That steadiness communicates something rarer, emotional leadership. Leadership is not control over her. It is control over yourself. A man who can regulate his own desire creates a container she can relax inside. That container allows her to expand. Expansion is where depth comes from. This is why so many women say they feel safe but excited with certain men. Safety alone is not enough. Excitement alone is unstable, but together they create something intoxicating. The chest responds strongly to this combination because it is closely linked to emotional exposure. This is where many women feel most seen or most guarded. Approach matters. When touch here feels respectful and assured, her body registers care without weakness. Care without weakness is powerful. It allows her to soften without feeling vulnerable in a dangerous way. Softening here is not collapse, it is trust, and trust unlocks sensation in ways technique never can. As rhythm continues, her awareness begins to narrow. This narrowing is not loss of control. It is focus. Focus amplifies sensation. When the mind stops scanning the environment, the body feels more. This is why external distractions break intimacy, and why internal calm deepens it. A man who remains internally calm becomes a stabilizing force. Her body leans towards stability instinctively, not because she is dependent, but because the nervous system seeks regulation. Regulation is attractive. This is not talked about enough. Women are not attracted to chaos in intimacy. They are attracted to men who can remain composed while desire exists. That composure creates trust. Trust allows surrender. Surrender is not submission. It is the choice to stop resisting. Resistance consumes energy. When resistance fades, energy becomes available for sensation. This is where many women experience pleasure as something spreading, not confined, not localized, but whole body. This spreading is a sign of deep nervous system engagement. And it only happens when the body feels emotionally unpressured. Expectation collapses this process. When a woman feels expected to respond in a certain way, her body tightens, not out of defiance, out of self-protection. Protection and pleasure cannot coexist. This is why confidence without entitlement is essential. A man who is okay with whatever happens creates freedom. Freedom allows authenticity. Authenticity allows intensity. The more freedom she feels, the more her body responds honestly. And honesty is always more powerful than performance. This is also why verbal reassurance is often unnecessary. Presence speaks louder, a calm demeanor, unhurried movements, a relaxed jaw, steady breathing. These signals communicate safety faster than words ever could, and women read them instantly. The chest area becomes responsive when these signals are present, not because it is being stimulated, but because the whole system feels aligned. Alignment is what allows sensation to deepen. Without alignment, touch remains surface level. With alignment, even subtle contact feels significant. This is where intimacy becomes memorable, not because something extreme happened, but because something real did. Real connection leaves an imprint. It stays in the body. This is why women often remember how a man made them feel long after details fade. The feeling of being relaxed and desired at the same time. The feeling of being seen without being evaluated. The feeling of being free to respond without pressure. These feelings create attachment. Not dependency, but emotional resonance. Resonance is what draws people back. It is not intensity alone. It is meaningful intensity. Meaning comes from awareness. Awareness comes from presence. Presence comes from self-regulation, and self-regulation is masculine maturity. This is the core lesson beneath all 5 moves. They are not techniques to apply, they are qualities to embody. When embodied, they transform intimacy naturally. A woman does not need to be convinced. Her body already knows how to respond. It only needs permission. And permission comes from safety, steadiness, and emotional clarity. As these elements continue to exist, the interaction deepens without effort. Desire feels mutual, not extracted. Connection feels shared, not managed. Pleasure feels expansive, oriented. This is where intimacy stops feeling transactional and starts feeling human. This is also where many men notice something unexpected. They feel more grounded too. Because presence is regulating for both people. A calm man feels his own body more. He is not chasing an outcome. He is experiencing the moment. This shared presence creates a loop. Her openness feeds his steadiness. His steadiness feeds her openness. And that loop intensifies the experience without escalation. This is sustainable intimacy, not rushed, not performative, but deeply felt and deeply remembered. As this loop continues, something else becomes clear, something rarely discussed. Intimacy is not driven by intensity, it is driven by coherence. Coherence means the body, the mind, and the emotional state are aligned. When they are misaligned, a woman may participate, but she does not fully open. When they are aligned, her responses become natural, effortless, and deeply felt. This is why presence matters more than precision. A man can be technically correct and still emotionally absent. An emotional absence is felt immediately. The female nervous system is highly perceptive. It detects hesitation, it detects impatience. It detects when touch is motivated by insecurity rather than confidence, and it responds accordingly. When insecurity is present, the body guards itself. When confidence is present, the body relaxes. Confidence in this context is not bravado, it is comfort with desire. Many men feel desire but are uncomfortable holding it. They rush to release it through action. But a man who can hold desire without urgency creates tension, the right kind, tension that feels controlled, tension that feels safe. This tension is what keeps her engaged. It keeps her body leaning in rather than pulling away. This is where stillness and rhythm work together. Stillness builds anticipation, rhythm sustains it. Anticipation without rhythm creates anxiety. Rhythm without anticipation creates boredom. Together, they create depth. Depth is what separates forgettable intimacy from meaningful connection. As this depth builds, the woman's awareness becomes increasingly embodied. She feels more, thinks less. This shift is crucial. Overthinking blocks sensation. Embodiment amplifies it. A man who remains calm while this shift happens allows her to stay there. If he becomes anxious, rushed, or outcome-focused, she is pulled back into her head. This is why self-regulation is not optional. It is foundational. Self-regulation tells her nervous system, I don't need you to perform. I don't need you to reassure me. I am stable. Stability is attractive. Not rigid stability, but relaxed stability, the kind that adapts without losing center. This is masculine maturity. It creates polarity without force. Her softness responds to his steadiness naturally. Not because she is weaker, but because contrast creates attraction. This is also why entitlement kills desire. Entitlement feels like pressure disguised as confidence. A woman feels when a man believes he is owed a response. That belief creates tension in her body. Not erotic tension, defensive tension. Defensive tension blocks openness. This is why confidence without entitlement is so powerful. It allows desire to be mutual rather than extracted. Mutual desire feels different in the body. It feels lighter. It feels freer. It feels expansive. As this dynamic continues, the chest area becomes more responsive, not as an isolated focus, but as part of a larger emotional opening. This is important. When one area of the body opens because the whole system feels safe, sensation spreads. When one area is targeted without safety, sensation collapses. Targeting feels objectifying. Attuning feels intimate. Attunement is the ability to sense and respond to what is happening now, not what you think should be happening. This is why presence beats planning. Planning pulls you out of the moment. Presence keeps you inside it. Inside the moment, signals are subtle but clear. A deeper breath, a slower movement. A quiet pause that feels charged instead of awkward. These moments are where intimacy lives, not in extremes, but in awareness. As awareness deepens, silence becomes comfortable. Comfortable silence is a sign of trust. Trust allows vulnerability. Vulnerability increases sensitivity. This chain reaction is natural when pressure is absent. Many men fear silence because they interpret it as lack of interest, but often silence is where a woman is feeling the most. Interrupting that silence pulls her out of sensation. A grounded man allows silence to exist. He does not rush to fill it. That patience is felt as confidence, and confidence allows her to stay open. As this continues, desire becomes less about escalation and more about immersion. Immersion means being fully inside the experience, not watching yourself, not evaluating, not anticipating the next step, just being. Being is where authenticity lives. Authenticity is deeply attractive because it feels real. Realness creates emotional safety, and emotional safety allows pleasure to deepen. This is why the 5 moves are not separate steps, they're interconnected states. Stillness creates anticipation, pressure grounds sensation, rhythm sustains engagement. Observation deepens connection, confidence without entitlement creates freedom. Together they form a container where desire can exist without anxiety. A container where pleasure can unfold naturally. This container is what many women crave, even if they cannot articulate it. They crave the feeling of being with a man who is present, calm, and aware. A man who does not rush them, a man who does not need validation, a man who does not lose himself in desire. That presence is rare, and rarity creates attraction. This is why women often say they feel different with certain men, not more excited, more grounded. And grounded desire is powerful. It is not explosive, it is enduring. It lingers. It stays in the body. This is what creates emotional imprinting. An imprint is not created by intensity alone. It is created by safety paired with desire. This pairing tells the nervous system. This experience is worth remembering, and the body remembers long after the moment passes. This is why understanding these dynamics changes everything, not just how intimacy feels, but how connection forms. Connection is built through consistency, not extremes, through presence, not performance, through awareness, not urgency. As this understanding settles in, intimacy becomes less stressful. There is no rush, no checklist, no pressure to impress, just attention. Attention is the most underrated element of desire, because attention says you matter, not in words, but in energy. Energy is what the body responds to, and when that energy is calm, steady, and intentional, the response is natural. This is the foundation beneath all meaningful intimacy. And it is available to any man willing to slow down, stay present, and lead with awareness. As these layers settle, the experience stops feeling like something that needs to be managed. It begins to feel organic. Organic intimacy has a very different quality. There is no rush to arrive anywhere, no silent pressure to prove something, no need to escalate just to maintain momentum. Instead, there is continuity. Continuity is what keeps desire alive. When moments flow into each other without disruption, the body stays engaged. This is why women often feel more drawn to men who are emotionally steady than to men who are emotionally intense. Intensity spikes and crashes. Steadiness builds and sustains. Steadiness gives the nervous system something to trust, and trust is what allows deeper responses. At this stage, something important shifts internally for her. She stops tracking time. She stops anticipating what comes next. She is no longer outside the experience watching it happen. She is inside it, inside her body, inside her sensations, inside the present moment. This is embodiment. Embodiment is where pleasure becomes immersive, not overwhelming, not chaotic, but rich. Rich sensations have depth. They are layered with emotion, safety, and awareness. This is why subtlety becomes powerful. A man who understands this does not need to increase intensity to maintain engagement. He maintains presence. Presence does the work. As presence continues, the body responds more freely. Her reactions become less guarded, not louder, more authentic. Authentic responses are unfiltered. They come from the body, not the mind. This is why a woman's reactions may feel quieter, but heavier, more real, more grounded. This grounded response is a sign of trust. Trust allows vulnerability. Vulnerability increases sensitivity. And sensitivity amplifies experience. This cycle reinforces itself, because the more she trusts the moment, the more her body responds. And the more her body responds, the safer the moment feels. This is how intimacy deepens without effort. It becomes a shared state rather than a sequence of actions. The chest area within this state responds as part of a larger opening. It is no longer isolated. It is connected to breath, connected to emotion, connected to the feeling of being held without being controlled. This connection is what many women crave but rarely experience, because it requires patience. It requires a man who is comfortable with slowness, a man who does not equate speed with confidence, a man who understands that restraint is not hesitation, restraint is mastery. Mastery over self creates safety for others, and safety allows desire to deepen. This is the paradox of intimacy. The more control a man has over himself, the more freedom a woman feels. Freedom allows expression. Expression allows pleasure. Pleasure becomes meaningful when it is chosen, not demanded. This is why entitlement is so destructive. Entitlement removes choice. Choice is essential for desire. When a woman feels she can respond freely without expectation, her body opens more fully. This openness is not something a man can force. It emerges when conditions are right. Those conditions are emotional clarity, presence, and calm confidence. As this understanding integrates, intimacy stops being something to do right. It becomes something to experience deeply. Men who reach this point often notice something unexpected. They feel more relaxed too. Because presence regulates both nervous systems. There is no performance anxiety, no pressure to impress, just mutual engagement. Mutual engagement feels balanced. Balanced experiences feel safe. Safe experiences allow depth. Depth is what makes intimacy memorable. This is why women often say they remember how a man made them feel, not what he did. Feeling is stored in the body, and the body remembers safety paired with desire. This memory influences attraction. It shapes who she feels drawn to, not logically, instinctively. Instinct follows the nervous system. The nervous system seeks regulation. Men who provide regulation through calm presence become attractive at a deep level. This attraction is not about looks. It is about how a woman's body feels in their presence. This is the essence of the 5 moves. They are not tricks, they are not strategies, they are expressions of emotional maturity. Stillness shows self-control, intentional pressure shows clarity, rhythm shows consistency, observation shows care, confidence without entitlement shows respect. Together, they create a container where intimacy can unfold naturally, without force, without pressure, without fear. When intimacy unfolds this way, it feels different, slower but deeper, quieter but stronger, subtle but unforgettable. This is the kind of connection that changes how a woman experiences intimacy as a whole, because it teaches her body that desire does not have to feel unsafe. That closeness does not have to feel rushed. That intensity can exist without chaos, and that realization is powerful for both people as this experience completes itself. There is no abrupt ending. No sense of being pulled away too quickly. There is integration. Integration is what allows satisfaction to linger, not just physically, emotionally. Emotionally satisfying intimacy leaves both people feeling grounded rather than depleted, connected rather than confused, calm rather than overstimulated. This is the mark of healthy desire. Desire that does not burn out, desire that does not require escalation to stay alive, desire that feels sustainable. And sustainability is what creates long-term attraction. This is why understanding these dynamics matters far beyond one moment. They influence how relationships form, how trust develops, how emotional bonds deepen. When a man embodies these qualities consistently, intimacy stops being unpredictable. It becomes something both people look forward to because it feels safe, because it feels real, because it feels human. And that is ultimately what most people are searching for, not intensity for its own sake, but connection that feels alive, grounded, and deeply felt. If this perspective shifted how you think about intimacy, take a moment to support the channel, like the video so it reaches more people who need this conversation. Subscribe for more psychology-based insights on attraction, emotional intelligence, and meaningful connection, because real intimacy is not about learning tricks. It's about understanding how people feel and responding with awareness.